All right, welcome everyone. My name is Lynn Hegelwald. I'm the Master's Program Manager here in the Elmore Family School of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Purdue. Glad you could join us this evening for this informational webinar on our online Master of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering. We are recording this session, and tomorrow I will send you a follow-up email with a link to the recording as well as some links to some of the references that I will mention tonight. Here's our agenda. Let me first introduce Eve. Eve Vega is one of our admissions counselors. Some of you may have already spoken to her. She is really your first contact at Purdue as far as getting information about the program. But Eve and I work very closely together, and she communicates with me frequently if you guys have questions that she can't answer, or maybe some specific situations that might be a little bit unique. So anyway, as far as our agenda goes, I'm going to talk about Purdue and the online degree. We're going to talk a little bit about completing your application, and then we should have plenty of time for any questions. So I've got a handful of slides I'm going to go through while I'm doing that. If you have any questions that come up, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and Eve can start answering those, or else we'll come back to them once I finish with my presentation. All right. So I always like to start by talking about Purdue. You're here tonight, so you know something about Purdue, but you may not be that familiar with the university. Purdue is a public land grant research university in West Lafayette, Indiana. So we are sort of in the upper left quadrant of Indiana. We're about an hour north of Indianapolis, 2 hours south of Chicago. The university was founded in 1869. We are a very large university. We have over 57,000 students at our West Lafayette campus, and then about 43,000 undergraduate students and 13,000 graduate students. Now, Purdue has a very long history of excellence in engineering education. As you can see from the image here, currently we are ranked number 5 overall in graduate engineering programs by U.S. News and World Report. And many of our programs are ranked in the top 10, both our undergraduate programs and our graduate programs. And actually, this program, our online MSECE, is ranked the number 1 program by U.S. News and World Report. So we're quite proud of that. If we dive down and look at ECE, we are the largest school at Purdue. We have more than 2,400 undergraduate students who are pursuing 2 degrees. We have a EE degree and a computer engineering degree. And then we're also the largest graduate program at Purdue with more than 1,600 graduate students. So in our graduate program, we have 2 master's degrees. We have the master's in ECE, which is what we're talking about tonight. We also have a master's in software engineering, which I'll touch on briefly. We have a very large PhD program that is a residential program. We have about 400 to 500 students in our PhD program. And then this online program is about 35% of our students. So we have over 600 students in this online program. Now, one thing I will say, Purdue Engineering has been doing online education for a long time. About 6 years ago, when I started in this job, we had about 25 online students. And my colleague in the graduate office, Matt Golden, he's been in the graduate office for more than 20 years. And so he talks about how they used to package videotapes and printed materials and send those out to students. That's kind of how we did online education. Obviously, with the advances in technology, we've totally changed our program and been able to grow it significantly. So 6 years ago, again, we had about 25 online students. Now we have over 600. So, of course, we have tons of alumni of our department working in companies around the world. We have over 125 faculty members, which makes us the largest or among the largest in the nation. And then, of course, those faculty members are doing all kinds of research, both on traditional topics and cutting edge topics as well. So taking a look at the degree, as far as the MSECE goes, we offer 1 degree. All of our students earn 1 degree. The fact that you are taking your courses online, it doesn't change anything. There's nothing on your diploma that says the degree was earned online. There's nothing on your transcript that says anything about it being online. You will take the same courses with the same faculty and earn the exact same degree as your on-campus peers. The program is fully online. You can complete the coursework on your schedule, sort of. That doesn't mean it's a self-paced program. It is not a self-paced program. Just like when you were an undergraduate, classes met Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever. You had homework, projects, quizzes, exams. These courses are exactly the same. They're the same type of courses that you would have taken on campus. What makes them unique, though, is that there are no synchronous meetings, or very, very rarely are there synchronous meetings. Everything is asynchronous. All the lectures are recorded. The vast majority of the students in our online program are working full time and typically take one course at a time. We know that they're doing their coursework, on their lunch break or in the evening or on the weekends. And that works really well with our program. We do have some students who are full-time. You can complete the degree in 1 year or take up to 6 years. Most of our students who are working full-time, it generally takes them 3 to 4 years to complete the degree. Our program is very flexible. We do have 7 main areas of interest within ECE. I'll talk more about those in a minute, but you get to choose the ECE courses that you take. This is not a program. There are some programs out there that are very prescribed. Like everybody comes in and takes this course, and then they take this course, and then they take this course. That's not the way our program works. We do have some curriculum requirements, which I'll talk about, but you get to choose the courses that are of interest to you. And if you have multiple areas of interest, that's fine as well. We don't have any problem with that. This is also a reduced price program. It operates on a credit hour basis, so it's $950 a credit hour. You pay as you go. The program does require 30 credit hours, so the full cost is $28,500. So I mentioned a little bit about coursework, how this program is very flexible. On the right side of the screen, you can see the 7 research areas that we have within ECE. And then on the left side, you can see, some examples of the coursework. So we have coursework in traditional topics like electromechanics, RF, antennas, lasers. But then we also have all kinds of coursework in deep learning, AI, quantum topics, big data. We're doing a lot in the semiconductor space right now. And our faculty are always creating new courses, which is pretty cool. We have a lot of really, really interesting courses like this game theory course that Vijay Gupta teaches. Just really interesting stuff. It's a really good opportunity to learn, to really increase your technical skills, but just a really wide variety of classes. I will tell you that our class list for online students is quite large. I don't know exactly how many courses we have running right now for spring, but it is probably in excess of 30 courses running for spring. Most of those are 3 credit hour courses. We do have some that are 1 credit hour. They're short courses, but a lot of variety for our students. You can also earn a concentration by taking 3 courses in a particular area. So for example, if you're interested in automatic control, if you take 3 courses in the automatic control area, you can earn a concentration. It doesn't cost you anything. It does show up on your transcript. It doesn't show up on your diploma. But a lot of our students do add those concentrations to their plans of study. Also, all of our courses are taught by faculty. We do have teaching assistants associated with the courses, but the faculty do all the teaching. So if we look at the curriculum requirements, the program requires 30 credit hours. You have to have a minimum of 15 credit hours of ECE graduate level coursework. So if you look at my diagram, my very creative diagram here, you can see in the green, we have 15 credit hours of ECE coursework. 2 of those courses are what we call core courses. So we have 1 core course in each of our research areas. So for example, 1 for computer engineering, 1 for power and energy systems, 1 for automatic control. You have to take 2 of those. And then you have to have at least an additional 9 credits of ECE coursework. You have to take 2 math courses. The math courses can be statistics as well. So we have math courses and statistic courses. And then you can have some coursework outside of ECE. We have a very large list of courses, relevant courses in other areas that are available to you. So in mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, biomedical engineering, aeronautical engineering, nuclear engineering. A lot of our students just continue to take ECE courses, but if you do have an interest in some of those other areas, there are courses available there as well. So what can you expect from your courses? As I mentioned, the lectures are recorded, so you can watch those when it's convenient to you. The courses come in a couple different varieties. We have some courses where the lectures have been pre-recorded within the past couple years. We have some that are recorded, on campus as the class meets, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10:30 or whatever. The instructor lectures, those are recorded. You can tune into those synchronously if you would like to, but that is never required. But our faculty do a really good job of recording those courses, and which allows us to offer more courses to you. So the courses include homework, quizzes, exams, projects. It really depends. Just like when you were an undergraduate, you probably had a variety of courses and types of assessments. We also utilize discussion forums. We use a tool called Piazza for a discussion forum, which is a really quick way for all of our students, and particularly online students, to get answers from their peers and from the teaching team. And then, of course, there are weekly office hours. Our faculty are really good at accommodating online students because, if the typical office hours are, 10:30 on a Thursday, you guys are probably working at that time. So they're really good about having office hours, after hours or on the weekend, or even by appointment. So I think our students overall are pretty happy with the flexibility of the program. So taking a look at our current students, as I mentioned, we have about 600 students in the program. The average age is 28. Almost everybody has a degree in ECE or EE. ME is the next most common undergraduate degree. I will say that master's programs in engineering are designed for students who have an engineering undergraduate degree. We do not teach foundational concepts at the graduate level. And so, I oftentimes hear from students who have a degree in chemistry or I don't know, even, a liberal arts type degree. But it is very, very rare that we will admit students with those backgrounds unless they've got some really unique work experience or something like that. You really have to have an engineering degree to have that foundational knowledge to succeed in our graduate level courses. Back to the profile of our current students, the average undergraduate GPA of the students that we admit is pretty high, about a 3.6. And as I mentioned before, most of them work full-time in a technical industry. And you can see from the three lists here, common undergraduate institutions that our students come from, most common undergraduate degrees, and then some of our most common employers. Eve, you want to talk about the application?
Absolutely. So if you are ready to join the Boilermaker family, the first step is going to be to apply. You will submit your application online. The application does have a fee associated with it. It's either going to be $60 if you are a domestic student or $75 if you are an international student. That fee is non-refundable. Once you submit the application, you will also need some documents. Those documents do include your transcripts. Those do have to be official and they need to come from any previous institution that you have attended. If you are an international applicant, you will also need to submit English translated copies if you received your instruction in a different language from English, and you may also need to submit your diploma. Please keep in mind that if you are an international student, English proficiency scores may be required. If you have any questions about whether we require that from your country, please reach out to us and we're happy to help answer those questions. We will also need 3 letters of recommendation from you. These letters of recommendation do have to come from either an academic or professional source. We do understand that there are some applicants that have been out of school for a while, so that if that is your case and you are no longer in contact with your professors, if they have a different email, no longer work at that institution, or any of the above, you can always submit all professional recommendation letters and vice versa. If you do not have any professional recommendations, you can submit all academic recommendations. What will happen is when you submit your application, there will be a section that will ask you to include the email addresses for those recommenders. So we go out or we go ahead and reach out to them on your behalf. You do not physically have to collect anything other than providing us with the name and email addresses for those recommenders. We will also need a resume. Please make sure that you do highlight any relevant experience that you have to this program. We will also need two different writing statements. One is an academic statement of purpose. The other is a personal history statement. Essentially, these two documents tell us more about who you are, where you've been, where you're going, helping us fill in the blanks between all your other application documents. That academic statement of purpose is going to be really helpful if you have a semester in your transcript where you maybe didn't perform the best. That'll help us understand maybe what happened during that semester. So make sure you do use that wisely. Lastly, we do not require the GRE. However, we do usually recommend it for students that come from universities that we are not familiar with, or if you have a traditionally low GPA, which for us, we do ask that you come in with a minimum of a 3.25 GPA, although our average accepted student does have closer to about a 3.6 GPA. Some things to keep in mind. We do have our next deadline of July 15th. Something that I do want to note is that we do ask that you submit all application materials in by the deadline, especially with those recommendation letters. Sometimes we see there is one recommender that will forget to submit that recommendation letter on time. So just make sure that you are communicating with your recommenders throughout the application process to ensure that your application review goes smoothly. If you have been admitted, congratulations. The next step is to accept your offer of admission. You will do that through your application portal. You will then complete your online student orientation, which also includes registering for courses.
Very good. Thank you, Eve. Just a couple things I'd like to add at this point. And I do see we have a question here. Does the GPA have to be higher than 3.25? We do take a holistic look at applications. We look not only at your GPA, but what school you went to, what kind of work experience you have, if you've got research experience. We look at all of that. But throughout all of that, we're really looking for evidence of success. Because we don't want to admit students if we're not confident that they can succeed in our programs. That's not good for you. It's not good for us. So we are definitely looking for evidence of success within your application. And as Eve mentioned, if you did, we know that things happen. Things may have happened during your undergraduate degree. Maybe you had a particularly tough semester or, an illness or something like that. If you tell us about that in your personal history statement, that can be really helpful. Of course, you don't have to disclose anything you don't want to, but it can help us understand, if you did have a semester that wasn't particularly great and maybe affected your GPA. Hold on. I was going to say something else and I forgot. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I'm always happy to pre-screen materials. I don't like students to pay the application fee or to, take the time to fill out the application and pay the application fee if I'm pretty positive they will not be admitted. So if you are unsure about your credentials and whether you qualify for our program, please feel free to send me your transcripts and your resume, and I am more than happy to take a look at those and, give you an indication as to whether or not I feel like you should apply. So don't hesitate to do that. Okay, one more thing I want to cover before we turn our attention to the questions. I did mention that we have another master's degree, and this is our degree in software engineering. It is a relatively new degree. It's online as well. All of the characteristics that I've talked about with the ECE degree are similar for the master's degree. But I did want to point this out. So let's say, on the left-hand side here, we've got the master's degree in electrical and computer engineering. If you are interested in computer engineering, and then the master's degree in software engineering is sort of a subset of that. Within that degree, we have 4 areas of interest: cybersecurity, embedded software, robotics and controls, machine learning and data science, and then systems software. And it's really, a personal preference. If you think you might be interested in a credential in software engineering as opposed to electrical computer engineering, take a look at the information about that software engineering degree on our website. I'm also happy to talk to you about that if that's something that you'd like to discuss. So with that, let me stop my screen share. I see we do have some questions in the chat. Let me take a look. And I see Eve has already answered some of these. I do want to say we did have a student ask, will online students have the option for the thesis track? And Eve is correct when she answered, no, we do not have a thesis track for our online students. However, students can do individual research projects with faculty, and they can use up to 3 credits of that towards the 30 credits needed for the degree. Now, if you were interested in doing something like that, you would have to go out and find a faculty member within ECE, negotiate a project and work that out with them. We don't have a list of those projects, but we do have just a couple students, a couple online students who have been able to find those opportunities. Although the vast majority of our online students are course only. So let's see, I'm looking back at the questions here. Would classes outside of ECE, say physics, for example, have prerequisites associated with them that would keep you from taking them? Yes and no. As I mentioned, to be admitted to this program, you pretty much almost always need an engineering undergraduate degree. So what ends up happening there is our graduate level courses don't teach foundational knowledge, and they assume that you have taken these, associated undergraduate courses. So when you register for courses at Purdue, you will see some prerequisites stated, and they will be Purdue course numbers, but it'll also say, you need to have Python programming, data structures, or whatever. We let our graduate students sort of self-assess that because we're not going to go back to your transcript at a different university and make sure you took those Purdue equivalent courses. So we generally don't prevent you from registering for courses, although some faculty are more strict than others. Some will do some pre-course assessments or like a first week assessment to make sure that you do have the prior knowledge needed to succeed in that course. I always tell students who are not, maybe they're going from one area within ECE to another, if they're a mechanical engineering student and they're, doing the ECE degree, you do have to be strategic about selecting your courses to make sure that you are prepared for those. So as a matter of fact, I was talking to a mechanical engineering student today in our program, and she's finding that she doesn't have that C programming and that Python experience, and that's really preventing her from taking a lot of the courses in the computer engineering area. So there are definitely some roadblocks there, but in general, most of our students do fine with any of those prerequisites or any of that prior knowledge. What time frame would an application submitted in July 2025 for the fall semester have? So I think what you're saying is you submitted your application already last year for fall 2026. We have not started reviewing applications for 2026 yet, but we will start doing that soon. As we mentioned, the fall semester begins at the end of August. We'll probably start reviewing applications in early February. We do review those on a rolling basis. So, from February on, we are looking at applications as they come in and admitting students along the way. What are common tracks for students who have a CS undergraduate degree? Yeah, this is a good question. Generally, that fits best with our computer engineering area. So, for example, if you have a background in computer science, but you're interested in semiconductors, that's going to be a fairly difficult transition to make because it's unlikely you would have taken those basic circuit analysis courses that DLEs and ECEs take. But yeah, so for a CS major, computer engineering would most definitely be, the best area there. Another question, can you do an online master's program and then in the future pursue a PhD? Yes, we do not have an online PhD program. Our PhD program is residential only, but for our existing master's students, including our online students, you do not have to reapply to the university if you want to stay for a PhD. However, there are some requirements. We are looking for a pretty high GPA at the master's level, 3.6 or higher. And then you do have to find an ECE faculty member willing to take you on as a PhD student. Matt Golden, my colleague in the graduate office, has been advising PhD students for many years. If you think you might like to stay and join us, or join us residentially for a PhD program, I would recommend that you talk to Matt. He's very helpful around, how do you go about finding a faculty member who can take you on as a PhD student. But we certainly welcome that for our online students. If an applicant has a strong GPA of almost 3.8, what makes their application stand out in the computer engineering master's application? What do we look for in the personal and academic statement? Yeah, I would say if you have a 3.8 GPA, that's very good. Chances are very good you would be admitted, particularly if you have professional work experience in the field. Again, we look at the GPA, what university you went to, what you've been doing since then, the quality of your written statements, the quality of your letters of recommendation. We look at all of those things. I was going to say something else. Can't remember. Can other test scores such as the LSAT or MCAT be submitted in lieu of the GRE? Yeah, we generally don't see that. I'm not sure those would be particularly helpful for our applicants. Is it more preferable if a student has structured his resume, projects, internships at the undergrad level according to the master's course he's applying to? Yeah, I think that's fine. We see applicants who are right out of their undergrad, and then we have other students who, probably typically, our average applicant has been out of school for 3 or 4 years, but we do see students who have been out of school for 30 years. So yeah, I think this is all fine. Well, one of the other questions we get a lot is around transfer credits. We do allow students to transfer in up to 6 credits of relevant graduate level coursework in which they earned a B or higher, and then apply that towards the master's degree. So the way that works is if you are admitted and you have some transfer credits, you would send that information to me. I kind of pre-evaluate that, let you know if it looks like those could be transferred. You put those on your Purdue plan of study, and then the graduate school will verify those through your transcripts and other things. So it is very common for our students to transfer in some credits. Let's see. If an applicant has a high GPA and has some internships, does that put them at a good spot? Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's a really good start. So I think that, somebody who has a high GPA like that is very likely to be admitted. Another thing we often talk about during these sessions is exams. So students ask about exams a lot. Not all courses have exams. A lot of courses will do projects instead, particularly in the computer engineering area, but we do have a good number of courses that have exams. And so how do we do exams asynchronously? Well, we typically use a proctoring tool called HonorLock, and HonorLock runs in the background when you take a test through Brightspace, our learning management system. HonorLock monitors you as you take the test. The good thing about it is it gives our students a lot of flexibility to take. Generally what we do for an exam is we have like a 24 to 48 hour window, and you can take the exam anytime within that window. The exam, for the exam itself, you'll have 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever. Again, HonorLock runs in the background while you're taking the exam. Our students find that it works really, really well. We don't have very many issues with it at all. It, helps maintain the rigor of our program. If you are in a course that is going to use HonorLock, there will be a practice exercise that you will complete ahead of time. That way you can make sure that, your technology is compatible and you understand what the process is going to look like. So that's a fairly seamless process for us. And again, it's something that our students really like. Eve, what else do we normally cover at this time?
Something that we don't typically cover, but has been a common question lately is what would you recommend for someone that is coming in with an engineering technology degree? Would this be an appropriate program?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in general, we do not admit students into our program who have an engineering technology degree. And that is because we find that the engineering technology courses are more hands-on and less theoretical than our ECE courses. And so, unfortunately, um, we find those technology students generally don't have the background needed for an ECE master's program. Um, there have been some students who have had some really special circumstances, maybe had a technology degree, but then worked as an engineer and maybe even took the professional engineering exam, things like that. So, if you fall into one of those categories, certainly reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you to see if, the program might be possible for you. Um, we have a question from Benjamin. Do you consider things like FEPE certifications? Absolutely. We consider that part of, those are your credentials. We certainly take those into consideration when we're looking at applications. Our projects usually group-based or individual. It just depends on the course. I know some are group-based and some are individual. Group-based projects can be a little bit challenging if, you're a remote student. But, one thing I will say about our faculty is they're really quite flexible with our online students. If, for example, if there's an assignment that they've set up that just doesn't work for online students, they get that. They're adaptable. Our students are good at providing feedback and saying, hey, you know what, this doesn't really work for online students. Can we do this instead? Or can you rethink this? So that's one of the nice things about our program. We generally find that our faculty are really quite accommodating to our online students. Question about summer courses. I see Eve is typing an answer. We do offer just a limited number of courses in the summer. I wish we offered more, but we don't, and we probably never will. Our faculty are traditionally off doing other things in the summer. They travel, they go to conferences, they catch up on their research. So we just don't offer that many courses in the summer. One thing that I often tell students is the math courses do run in the summer. So oftentimes I tell students to save those math courses for the summer. That's a good time to make some progress with those math courses. A student has a 3.3 GPA but was an athlete. Yeah, it really just depends on what your whole application looks like. But again, if you want to send me your information, I'm more than happy to pre-review your credentials. What specific things do you look for in the academic and personal statements? There are online some prompts for those written statements. So as long as, we just look for students to follow those prompts and address those topics. Would it be possible to get accommodations for learning disabilities with online courses? Absolutely. Purdue has a very robust disability resource center. We work with them all the time on accommodations that our students have for exams, most commonly extended time. We are very experienced in that, whether you have extended time or we have students who have a wide variety of accommodations. Low vision, we have students with chronic medical conditions we have to work with. We have students who are active duty military. So we're really good at working with all those things. I think Purdue is really, really good at accommodating the needs of our students. So yeah, absolutely not a problem. How are cumulative versus departmental GPAs weighed in admissions? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we do look at your cumulative GPA, but we certainly look at your performance in relevant courses to the degree. So your ECE courses, your math courses, things like that. We look at both of those. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment. I'm trying to think of any other things that we normally cover at this time. As I mentioned, look for a follow-up email from me. Probably tomorrow, if not tomorrow, then the next day. I'll send you a link to the recording and then a link to some of the on our website. We have a master's program student guide on our website that has all the curriculum information. It has sample plans of study. It has course lists. I'll send you a link to that. I think you'll find that information useful. Um, we do just have one question that came in. Is the area of interest in the application binding? For example, do I have to stick with what I put down if I find out after my first term I want to change my concentration? Yeah, that is not binding at all. We are actually very flexible. So if when you fill out your application, you say you're interested in semiconductors and then you change to VLSI, totally fine. We're quite flexible in that. So yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see, I was talking about the follow-up email. But please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You want to do a Zoom meeting, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm more than happy to review your credentials and answer any questions that that you may have. So thanks to my colleague Eve for joining me this evening. I'm glad you guys could all join. And we look forward to hearing from you. You guys have a great evening.